Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Saturday, October 27th, and welcome to my video commentary. Well, today we're going to remember something that happened 35 years ago this week, or at the end of October 1983. President Reagan was getting ready for re-election. The economy was starting to pick up. Things were looking very bright for President Reagan's re-election. There was some talk of former Vice President Mondale running for president as a Democrat. There were several names in the air for the Democrats. Eventually, of course, they picked Vice President Mondale, and eventually President Reagan was reelected in a huge landslide in November of 1984. But a couple of things happened this week that had a huge impact on President Reagan's foreign policy. The first one was the incident in Beirut, where a couple of trucks drove into the base where the American soldiers were sleeping literally at the time, and it blew up the entire base, killing about 230 Marines. There were also some soldiers from France, some U.S. sailors who were also killed. It was a very bloody day, to say the least. It was an awful day especially the Marines, who had very significant losses in a very, very short time. And that was in many ways one of the early signs of terrorism. And after that, you began to see federal buildings and especially military bases protected against this kind of terrorism, that is, a truck being driven into a facility full of bombs that would explode and kill a bunch of people. And shortly after that, you began to see federal buildings protected with these big cement blocks, and certainly bases around the world and embassies around the world began to take a more serious position regarding this kind of terrorism, that is, a truck being driven into a facility. The other thing that happened almost at the same time was that President Reagan authorized the invasion of Grenada. Now, Grenada is a very small island in the Caribbean. Most people probably had never heard of it. There was a medical school at that particular island, and some American students were there at the medical school. But the real importance of Grenada was the geographic location. And the Soviets had been targeting Grenada, so they had Cuban troops go into Grenada, and they were right there. They were propping up a communist government, and of course Reagan did not accept that, and he went in and he drove out the Cuban troops, and Reagan liberated Grenada. Again, the importance of Grenada was not Grenada itself. The importance was, of course, the proximity to the Panama Canal, because had Grenada come under Soviet hands, they could have put an Air Force base in Grenada, and they could have attacked the Panama Canal, for example, quite easily from that location. So it was a huge strategic victory for President Reagan at the time of the Cold War. And it also turned out to be the first time that the United States had directly defeated Castro, because at one point during the invasion of the United States, it was U.S. troops fighting some of Castro's troops there in Grenada. It turned out to be a brilliant move, an example of Reagan as a decision maker, a man who understood the big picture and understood who the real enemy of the world was, which of course at that time was the Soviet Empire. So we remember the tragedy of Beirut and the death of many American soldiers, and the success, the wonderful success of the invasion of Grenada 35 years ago this week. Well, we have all of these videos over on YouTube, we have them on Twitter, and we have them on my blog. And if October 27th is your birthday, happy birthday. Bye-bye, everybody.